After days of speculation, Prince Harry has confirmed he won't be bringing his wife Meghan or their children to London when he and his family return to the UK this week. The Duke of Sussex hosing down hopes of a family reunion with the King amid ongoing security concern.
King Charles waited 4 years. 4 years without laying eyes on his grandchildren. 4 years of video calls, missed birthdays, and a silence so thick you could feel it across an ocean. And then, finally, there was a plan. A real one. Dates, locations, names attached to it. Harry was supposedly bringing the whole family back to Britain. Archie and Lilibet were finally going to see their grandfather. Charles cleared his calendar. He reportedly offered a royal residence. He allowed himself, perhaps for the first time in years, to feel genuinely hopeful. And then, in less than 48 hours, it was gone. Not quietly shelved, not politely postponed. Blown apart, publicly, messily, and in a way that left even Harry's most loyal defenders struggling to explain what they had just witnessed. This is the story of how one of the most anticipated royal reunions in recent memory collapsed in real time. And the details of how it fell apart are more revealing than anything that happened before it. Stay with me, because this one goes deep. Setting the scene, the buildup. To understand why this particular collapse hit differently, you have to understand what was actually being built up in the days before it all fell apart. This wasn't the usual Sussex rumor cycle. It wasn't a vague suggestion planted in a friendly outlet that fizzled before anyone got their hopes up. This was supposed to be the big one. The occasion was the Invictus Games' 1 year to go celebration in Birmingham, a legitimate reason for Harry to be in the UK, a public-facing event with real purpose attached to it. On the surface, it looked like the perfect moment for the family to quietly take a step forward. Low pressure, built-in justification, something that didn't require anyone to admit anything. And the backdrop made it even heavier. King Charles hadn't seen Archie and Lilibet since the Platinum Jubilee. Think about that for a moment. Not a quick visit, not a casual drop-in. The last confirmed sighting of those children with their grandfather on British soil was years ago, at one of the most significant royal events of the decade. Before the book, before the documentary, before the lawsuits, before all of it. So when word quietly began circulating that Harry might actually bring the whole family, Meghan included, the children included, the reaction wasn't just excitement from royal watchers. According to multiple people close to the palace, Charles himself was described as genuinely hopeful, excited even. Let me ask you something. Put yourself in Charles's position for a moment. You are a father. You are a grandfather. You have been publicly accused of racism, indifference, and neglect. You have watched your son sell those accusations to the world. And yet through all of it, you have never stopped leaving the door open. You have kept offering, keep reaching, keep hoping. And now, there is a plan, a real plan, with dates attached. How invested would you be in that moment? The itinerary drops. Friday, June 27th. On Friday, June 27th, something unusual happened. An itinerary quietly landed in the inboxes of royal reporters. And this wasn't vague. This wasn't sources suggest. This was specific. Meghan visiting a hospital. Her first UK public engagement in 6 years. A private trip to Princess Diana's grave at Althorpe, with the children. Harry attending a children's bereavement charity event. A symposium connected to wounded veterans. A visit with the Chelsea pensioners. Specific dates, specific locations, specific events with names attached. This was a plan, and it read, honestly, like the beginning of something, like the opening chapter of a story that a lot of people had been waiting years to read. Harry's camp apparently shared a detailed itinerary with the Sussex Communications WhatsApp group on that Friday, and one prominent royal correspondent published a glowing, detailed piece about the upcoming visit that same evening, before 9 o'clock at night. Archie and Lilibet visiting their grandmother Diana's grave for the very first time. Meghan stepping back onto British soil for a public appearance after 6 years away. On paper, it looked like a genuine homecoming. The kind of story that could have, if handled right, started to change the conversation entirely. For about 24 hours, it looked completely real. And then, Saturday arrived. The collapse. Less than 21 hours later. 21 hours. That is how long it took for the whole thing to fall apart. Because on Saturday, a completely different story broke. Harry had leaked, and let's be precise about that word, leaked, to selected media outlets that his security request had been rejected. He wasn't getting what he wanted. He was reportedly reconsidering bringing Meghan and the children at all. The same trip, described in two completely contradictory ways, separated by less than a day. Stop and think about what that means. On Friday night, royal reporters were publishing detailed accounts of a family homecoming. By Saturday, Harry himself was briefing outlets that the whole thing was in jeopardy. Not because circumstances had changed, not because new information had emerged, not because anyone had made a different decision. Here is the part that started making people ask very uncomfortable questions. According to multiple accounts, nothing about Harry's actual security arrangement had changed at all. Not the threat level, not the ruling, not the policy. His security situation on Saturday was, by several accounts, the exact same setup that had been in place since he stepped back from royal duties. No new intelligence, no new danger, nothing. So what actually changed? The answer, when you look closely at the timeline, is nothing except the public narrative, and that timing is the thing you cannot explain away. The security question. What was actually being asked? Let's be precise here, because this matters. Harry has not been entitled to publicly funded UK police protection since he stepped back as a working royal. That decision has been made, reviewed, and upheld multiple times. The body that makes those decisions, RAVEC, the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, operates entirely separately from the Crown, entirely separately from Charles. The King cannot override it. He cannot influence it. He legally has no power to make that call. And here is something several commentators have pointed out repeatedly. Security experts with genuine professional backgrounds in exactly this field have weighed in. The assessment, from people who spend their careers managing exactly this kind of risk, is that Harry's own private security team is more than capable of handling a family visit to the United Kingdom. One security professional who spent decades working with high-profile clients was direct about it. He said Harry's team had almost certainly already told him privately that this trip was entirely manageable, that they could handle it, that there was no operational reason it couldn't happen safely. But that, apparently, wasn't the answer anyone on the Sussex side wanted to hear. Now here is the question I want you to sit with. If your own security team, the people you are paying, the people whose entire professional purpose is your safety, tells you the trip is manageable, and you still refuse to go unless a foreign government gives you armed police escorts at public expense, what is that really about? Is it safety, or is it something else entirely? The leverage theory, using Charles as the target. This is the part of the story that several commentators and insiders keep returning to, and it is the most uncomfortable version of events. The theory, laid out clearly by multiple royal watchers who have been following this for years, goes like this. Announce the visit publicly. Generate the headlines. Let the British press build the anticipation. Let King Charles, a father, a grandfather, a man who has kept the door open through every single thing his son has done, get emotionally invested in the idea of finally seeing those children. Let that hope settle in. Let it become real to him. Then reveal the security rejection. Frame it as a crisis. Make the possibility of losing this moment entirely feel imminent and devastating. The hope being that Charles, faced with all of that, would feel compelled to intervene. There is just one enormous problem with that plan. Charles cannot intervene. Legally, structurally, constitutionally, he cannot. Security decisions for the royal family sit with RAVEC and with the government, not the monarch. The king has no power to override those decisions, no matter how personally he might want to. The system is specifically designed to prevent exactly that kind of interference, no matter who is doing the asking, no matter how high up they are. King Charles is a serious man who understands where his power begins and ends. He knows he cannot preside over government decisions. He knows that even if every instinct in him is screaming to fix this, fix it for his grandchildren, to fix it for whatever is left of the relationship with his son, he cannot make that call. Which means if this was a leverage play, it was aimed at someone who had no lever to pull. And that, more than anything else, is why the whole strategy, if that is what it was doomed from the moment it was constructed. The pattern nobody wants to say out loud. Let's talk about something that keeps getting danced around in polite royal commentary, but deserves to be said plainly. This is not the first time, not even close. Cast your mind back. How many times have we been here? A Sussex announcement lands. The press runs with it. The public gets invested. Charles gets invested. And then, at the last possible moment, always with someone else to blame, it collapses. The announcement about moving back to the UK, the quiet hints about reconciliation, the Colombia trip that was supposed to signal a new chapter, Nigeria, the Invictus buildups that generated headlines without delivering results. Each time, there is a reason. Each time, that reason involves something external. The media, the palace, the government, the security services, doing something that made the plan impossible. Each time, Harry and Meghan emerge as the victims of forces beyond their control. But here is the thing about patterns. Patterns don't lie. Individual events can be explained. Two events can be coincidence. But when you reach 4, 5, 6 iterations of the same structure, announcement, investment, collapse, blame, you are no longer looking at bad luck. You are looking at a repeating mechanism. And the people closest to Charles, the people who have watched him extend olive branch after olive branch and seen every single one of them either ignored or turned into a weapon, are starting to say that out loud. Not in royal briefings, not in official statements, but in the quiet conversations that eventually make their way to journalists. The message, increasingly, is this: enough. Not from hatred, not from indifference, but from exhaustion. From the recognition that hope, when it is exploited systematically, eventually becomes something you cannot afford to keep offering. What the children deserve, the part nobody says. And here is the section of this story that almost nobody wants to go near because it feels too personal, too raw. Archie and Lilibet, two children who had no vote in any of this, no say in the decision to leave, no input into the book that named their family, no role in the documentaries, the podcast, the legal battles, the leaks. They were born into a situation entirely of their parents' making, and they are growing up bearing the weight of it. King Charles has not seen those children in years. Not a quick visit. Years. And with every passing cycle, every announcement that builds hope and then collapses, that gap gets wider. Those children get older. The window for the kind of early childhood relationship that shapes how a grandchild feels about a grandparent narrows a little more each time. There will come a point where Archie and Lilibet are old enough to understand what has been kept from them, old enough to ask questions, old enough to form their own views about why their grandfather, who by every account adores them, has been absent from their lives for so long. What will they be told? Whose version of events will they grow up believing? That question sits at the heart of everything. It is more important than the security dispute, more important than the PR war, more important than who leaked what to which journalist on which Saturday evening. And right now, every decision being made on their behalf is moving them further from an answer rather than closer to one. The silence from William. One figure has been largely absent from the public conversation around this particular collapse, and that absence is itself a statement. William has said nothing, publicly. Nothing about the cancelled visit, nothing about the security dispute, nothing about the grandchildren his own father hasn't seen in years. And the people around him are not accidentally letting that silence speak. Because William's silence is not neutrality. It is a position. After everything that has passed between them, the specific accusations in the book, the claims made publicly about conversations that were private, the suggestion that the institution he is preparing to lead is institutionally racist, William has landed somewhere that is not forgiveness, not reconciliation, and not open doors. He watched his father keep reaching. He watched every gesture get weaponized, and he has drawn his own conclusions about what engagement with the Sussex machine costs the people who try it. Whether that position is right or wrong, understandable or cold, is something reasonable people can debate, but it is real. And Charles, caught between his own instinct to reconcile and the unified reluctance of everyone immediately around him, is navigating that alone. That is the weight sitting on this story that rarely gets named directly. Not just a son who left, a family divided on whether reaching out to him does more harm than good, and a king trying to hold the middle ground between them, aging, unwell, and running out of time to get this right. Who was really driving this? This is the question that keeps surfacing when you look at the full picture, because several people close to the situation have suggested that Harry, left entirely on his own, probably wouldn't be fighting this battle with this level of intensity. The finger keeps pointing in another direction. The theory from security insiders is that the push for full state-level protection, motorcades, closed streets, the full ceremonial treatment afforded to an active working royal, is coming primarily from Meghan. Not because of a genuine threat assessment, but because of what that level of protection represents, the status it conveys, the visual it creates, the message it sends to the world about who the Sussexes are and how they expect to be treated. Think about that for a moment. What does a motorcade say? What does it communicate to the world when you roll through London with police outriders and closed streets? It says, "We matter. We are important. We are still royal." Walking in with a private security detail, however competent, however professional, doesn't say that. And if the concern is less about physical safety and more about optics, then suddenly the whole dispute makes a different kind of sense. It also raises a question about some of Harry's recent overseas trips. Visits to places like Ukraine and Nigeria, destinations that carry genuinely elevated security profiles, have been cited by some observers as attempts to build a case, to establish a pattern, to argue, "Look how dangerous my world is, look where I go, look what I face. Therefore, I need the protection I am asking for." If that reading is correct, then even those trips were not entirely what they appeared to be on the surface. The meltdown becomes public, Portugal. And then came the detail that shifted everything. While all of this was unraveling, the leaks, the countered leaks, the contradicting headlines, Harry and Meghan were not exactly in hiding. They were reportedly vacationing in Portugal, staying near a luxury resort, by some accounts, at a property they may have purchased there. Think about that image for a moment. A man who is publicly claiming the United Kingdom is too dangerous for him and his family to visit, who has reportedly been in tears over the situation, voice breaking during private phone calls, sources describing a pattern of paranoia, severe anxiety, and what one contact bluntly described as a profound mental dysfunction. That same man, that same week, comfortably vacationing at a luxury European resort a short flight away from the country, he says he cannot safely enter. The dissonance between those two images was not lost on anyone paying attention, and the tears themselves, reported by journalist Tom Sykes, based on multiple sources, backfired in a way Harry's camp almost certainly did not anticipate, because instead of generating sympathy, which is presumably what the leaking of that detail was designed to do, the public reaction turned sharply critical almost overnight. The framing from Harry's side was a broken father, devastated at the prospect of losing time with his own father, a son in genuine emotional pain. The framing that landed with the public was something else entirely, a grown man in tears because he didn't get what he wanted while vacationing in Europe. Words like paranoid, delusional. Commentators who had previously given Harry some measure of benefit of the doubt started using language like tantrum, like spoiled, like a man who has confused emotional leverage with genuine crisis. The moment the narrative was supposed to generate compassion, it generated the opposite. And that reversal happened fast. The palace denial. Olive branch. That wasn't. Just when it seemed like the story had reached peak chaos, another detail surfaced and then immediately collapsed. Reports began circulating that Harry had quietly accepted an offer to stay at a royal residence during the visit. A sign, some suggested, that things were actually being smoothed over behind the scenes, that perhaps the palace was extending an olive branch, and Harry was, this time, taking it. It sounded like progress. It sounded like exactly the kind of quiet back-channel development that occasionally cuts through the noise and points toward something real. Buckingham Palace's own correspondent shut it down almost immediately. Rebecca English, who writes on behalf of the palace and is head of the Royal Rota, issued a statement that left absolutely no room for interpretation. No such offer was understood to have been received by the royal household, not under negotiation. not being finalized, not informally discussed, a flat, direct denial. So now you have two completely incompatible versions of events, one coming from sources close to the Sussexes, one coming directly from the palace itself. They cannot both be true, and once that contradiction became public, the specific details almost stopped mattering, because what the public was now watching wasn't a family drama, it was a narrative war, and one side of that war was, by every available measure, losing. The Taylor Swift comparison, and why it backfired instantly. As the story churned on, one royal correspondent made an argument that seemed, on its surface, like a reasonable point. He noted that Taylor Swift, when performing in the UK, received police protection, while King Charles's own grandchildren were supposedly receiving nothing. Fifth, sixth, and seventh in line to the throne, he said, getting zero public security, while a pop star gets a motorcade. Within hours, that specific claim had a public fact check attached directly beneath it on social media. And the correction was precise. Swift's instance of police protection was tied to a specific, credible, identified terror threat connected to a stadium event hosting tens of thousands of people, coming in the direct shadow of the Manchester Arena bombing, a situation where senior government officials were also in attendance and where intelligence pointed to genuine active danger. That is not blanket celebrity treatment. That is a direct operational response to a real, named threat against a mass public gathering. Compare that to Harry's situation, a private citizen traveling with a professional private security team. No new intelligence pointing to any specific threat, no active identified danger, no mass public gathering, no government officials requiring coordination. Not remotely the same scenario. And the public, within hours, understood exactly why. The attempt to draw that equivalence didn't strengthen the security argument. It weakened it. And the community note sitting underneath the original post, visible to everyone, made sure that correction wasn't easy to miss. Catherine, the contrast nobody planned. And then, almost perfectly timed, something else happened entirely. Something that had absolutely nothing to do with the Sussex drama and everything to do with why the contrast landed so hard. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, completed the National Three Peaks Challenge. Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike, Snowdon, all three of Britain's highest mountains climbed within 24 hours in support of the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity, the hospital that treated her during her own illness. There was no itinerary leaked beforehand, no press release building anticipation, no public negotiation about security arrangements or logistics, no strategically placed details in a friendly magazine. She simply did it, and only afterward did the public find out it had happened at all. She reached the final summit, Snowdon, as the sun was setting on Sunday evening, and she wasn't greeted by a camera crew or a communications team. She was greeted by her husband, their 3 children, and her parents, waiting quietly at the base. In a short video released afterward, she spoke about what the challenge meant to her, about her own experience with illness, about gratitude toward the people who cared for her. She paused between sentences. She thought about what she was saying. She spoke without a script. It was by every measure authentic. And landing in the exact same week as the Sussex security collapse, the contrast was impossible to miss. On one side, a woman who had been through cancer treatment, who climbed 3 mountains in 24 hours without telling anyone, and said thank you quietly at the end. On the other, a couple who publicly announced a trip they apparently didn't have fully confirmed, used it to build public pressure, and then blamed the collapse on a security system that, by most accounts, hadn't changed at all. The timing wasn't planned by anyone. It didn't need to be. Where Charles stands now. So where does all of this actually leave the king? By most accounts, Charles is still personally open to a meeting. Still, after all of this, he has reportedly floated the idea of Meghan and the children flying in for just a single day, a shorter, lower-profile visit that sidesteps the full week-long itinerary. Still reaching, still leaving the door open, but that idea isn't getting much support from anyone around him. William, according to multiple sources, has no interest in being part of any reconciliation effort right now. After everything, the book, the accusations, the public campaigns, his position is reportedly firm. Camilla, by most accounts, is even less inclined. which places Charles in what might be the most difficult position of all, a father who genuinely wants to know his grandchildren, surrounded by people who have concluded, through painful personal experience, that every gesture of goodwill gets turned into ammunition. And here is the brutal truth that hangs over all of it. Even if Charles wanted to intervene, in the security dispute, in the family rift, in any of it, the structures around him are specifically designed to prevent that kind of unilateral action. The system isn't built for the king to make exceptions, not for family sentiment, not for personal relationships, not even for his own grandchildren. He can offer a home. He can keep the door open. He can be described by people close to him as heartbroken, but he cannot make Harry come back, and he cannot make Harry bring those children. That decision belongs entirely to Harry and Meghan, and based on everything that has played out over the past week, how they are using that decision tells you something important about what this was ever really about. What this actually tells us. Here is what I want to leave you with. This wasn't a surprise to many people who have been watching this story closely. The pattern has been building for years. A high-profile announcement, public investment, maximum anticipation, followed by a collapse that someone else gets blamed for. Nigeria, Colombia, and now this. At a certain point, a pattern that consistent stops looking like bad luck. It starts looking like a method. But here is the question that I genuinely don't know the answer to, and I suspect you don't either. Is Harry doing this knowingly? Is this a calculated strategy, executed with precision? Or is this someone genuinely in distress, genuinely struggling, making decisions that keep blowing up in his face because he is surrounded by people who are telling him what he wants to hear rather than what is true? Both of those things can look identical from the outside, and that's what makes this story, underneath all the noise, genuinely sad. A grandfather who has kept the door open through everything. Children who are growing up not knowing him. A son who, by most accounts, is not okay. And a system built in ways that nobody seems to fully understand until it's too late to change course. King Charles cleared his calendar. He offered his